Welcome to another episode of DD on the Spot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. And before I get to our guests here today, I'd like to remind everyone that if you enjoy this content, to please give a like and subscribe down below. I'd greatly appreciate it. We have Samantha Baskett on the podcast. She goes by Sammy, but she's coming to us all the way from Reno. She's a nationally qualified NPC figure competitor, and she's on here to share her health and fitness journey, how she stays in shape. And, obviously we're talking during the pandemic, and we're talking to her during the summertime in Reno, so God knows how hot it is there. I mean, I think the over-under for my guess is probably going to be like 150, and I don't even know if I'm going to be able to make money off of that. But first of all, she's our current guest. So, Sam, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me.
So now here's the $1,000,000 question. What's the weather like in Reno today?
It's actually nice today. It's only like 78 degrees compared to
What?
how it's been lately. So it's actually lovely today.
Okay, I'm all the way up in Minnesota, and this is the first time ever that we've had a guest here from Reno where the weather is actually hotter in Minnesota than it is in Reno. It's like 85 here, so I don't know if that's the
Yeah.
sign for the apocalypse. I mean, I guess we're all about to experience it, everyone, because that's just absolutely ridiculous. Now I have friends too that are in like
It's a
Arizona.
rarity. I'm like, this is a rarity today.
I know, and it's a rarity for it to be. I mean, I'm looking at my weather schedule, and it's 90 degrees for the rest of the week, and I'm just like, what? This is just insane. But yeah, I've had guests on from Arizona. It's like 120, and they're like, oh yeah, it's just another average day. And I was like, I don't get how those people could live there. But so I think you're actually like my fourth guest from Reno. We've had quite a few guests from Reno, so a lot of it. And I gotta ask, so have you? My favorite show on History Channel is Pawn Stars. Have you been to that Pawn Star place ever?
No, I haven't.
Okay, I had a guest that drove by it, and that's always like a go-to. Like if I ever come down to Reno, that's one of my things. I mean, I'm a history major, so I mean, the history buff is my thing. But before we get into that, because I mean that's a whole podcast in and of itself. Why don't you give us your backstory on what inspired and motivated you to get in shape, and how that led to where you're at right now?
Yeah. So, gosh, I've always been kind of an athlete on and off since high school. But I started about 4 years ago. I started in one of like those group fitness places, and just fell in love with the atmosphere of it. And then from there, one of the trainers, I signed up to do like personal training with him and got into like really lifting weights and immediately like fell in love with doing that. And he just kind of randomly put a bug in my ear one day of, hey, did you think about competing? And I just kind of took it and ran, to be honest. So that's what got me started into the competitive world of bodybuilding anyway.
Would you have any like knowledge about bodybuilding prior to him, sort of putting that in your head, or was it something that you were aware of? Because a lot of people, they don't understand it, and then they get into it, and then they find out about it. But did you have any prior knowledge of the sport before then?
No, I really didn't. So he like said that, and I'm like, what do you like? I didn't even know what he meant. And so like I went home and like Googled it, and I was like, yeah, I kind of like this. I'm a very competitive person, so anything that I can exude that in, I'm happy about. So
No, and that's I mean, just the competitive nature that you have to be a bodybuilder is just, it's off the charts, which is why I like to have them on as guests, because just that dedication and that drive. I mean, I was a baseball player, and hey, I could get away with eating whatever I wanted because I was a pitcher, and as long as I ran every once in a while, I was fine. With bodybuilding, I mean, that's a whole different beast. But before we get into that, I mean, I always say if you were to walk into a gym with 100 people, there's 100 different ways as to how those people got into shape, whether it comes down to their diet, their nutrition, how many reps they do, what exercises they do. So many little things add up to that overall package that people end up seeing, and a lot of people don't understand that. I mean, if you were to walk up to someone and say, hey, what'd you train for that body part? I want mine to look like that too. What works best for them 99% of the time isn't going to work as good for you. What was that journey like for you? Because I know that you had, probably some help along the way, but still, it's just always constantly evolving and trying to figure out things that work best for your body specifically.
yeah, no, definitely. I think at first it's definitely been a learning journey for me. At first, I kind of pushed myself to the limits constantly, and definitely, I would say overtrained. Um, and that definitely, I think, has slowed down my progress. I think I could possibly be further than where I am right now if I wouldn't have done that. So after a couple of injuries, I finally learned the hard lesson that more is not always better. And so finding that right dose of everything, whether it be, lifting, cardio, but I think having like a coach and trainers to help you along that way and learn and be coachable is a huge part of that process.
Oh yeah, I mean, we've had people that have tried to do this lifestyle on by themselves, and I always say, I salute you, good luck, but it's not going to be that easy. Where I mean, you definitely need to have that help. But what is your relationship like with cardio? Because I'm one of those people where I mean, I could walk on a treadmill for 8 hours straight, and just because I've had jobs working in warehouses where that's basically all I did was I lifted boxes and I was constantly moving. But when it comes excuse me, when it comes to like hit training or anything that has to do with moving my legs at a quicker pace, I'm also 6'3", so I mean, you gotta
Yeah.
you gotta you got a little bit more to work with. But what is your relationship with cardio like?
It's a love hate
Yep.
for sure. When I first started out in this journey at the time, I had a coach that pushed like heavy cardio. Like towards the end, it was like 90 minutes a day. It's just like insanity. And so, thank God for my coach now. Where honestly, like I do 20 minutes of cardio, usually hit style, which is my favorite, just as needed, because your body adapts to it so quickly that, if it gets used to that amount, then there's nowhere to go with that. And you're just doing more and more and more, which is just crazy. And so,
Even during this quarantine, like I've done like 3 or 4 90-minute cardio sessions, but for me, the cardio session, all it is walking. I only get like 8 miles in, but it's just constantly walking for 90 minutes. And yeah, I burn like 1,200 calories, but it's just, yeah, I could never imagine doing like an actual like cardio session that long. And then, my props go out to all those marathon runners. I always say they're probably the most insane people on the planet. Like I would never want to be locked in a room with them because, God knows if they're willing to do that to themselves, what else they're willing to do. But it's just, yeah, cardio is that's definitely a make or break thing for a lot of people though, because I know a ton of guys that have never, you know, walked a mile in their life other than walking probably to the gym and back to their car. But and you can definitely tell a difference in a lot of those people. But that also brings me into probably my favorite question to ask, because I love to talk genetics on this podcast, because especially in this day and age where I mean everyone's on social media, and a lot of people, they see people's photos of when they're at their best, and they don't realize that you can only be the best version of themselves, of yourself, because they look at these photos and they're like, oh my god, I want his arms, or I want her abs, or I want their back. And then it's like, first of all, you don't know how they got to that point. You don't know what their genetics like. Maybe they were just blessed to be, really gifted in those body parts. And I always say, whenever someone first gets started in the gym, they always have that one body part that really, really takes off, that they don't have to train as much. And they have that one body part that just lags behind, that they have to train to death, basically, to get to semi catch up, because most of the time it doesn't even really catch up. But for me, I mean, my back, just because I had jobs lifting and loading all the time, so you either got a really nice back or you quit. But like I said, being 6'3", my legs are just absolutely shot, where I could inject pure muscle into my calves, and they just don't grow at all. So I've struggled with that. But what were those body parts for you when you were getting started?
um, the body parts that probably took off. My back has always been my pride and joy, you might say. And so I love training it. I've never had an issue with it, like growing or anything. Um, as far as my problem areas, definitely would be my shoulders have always been like a struggle, and legs. To get the right definition there. My legs have good muscle on them, but it's hard to get them conditioned. So,
Oh my, I mean, yeah, I should refine what I say. Where it's like, I can put on decent size, but yeah, if it ever came to like getting my summer body ready, which I mean, I had to cancel it this year because of coronavirus, which I'm kind of happy for. I can still maintain a little bit of weight. I'm about 10 pounds more than I would like to be, but I could always, if all of a sudden they said everything's opening, if they said like everything's opening up and we found a cure, just give me 1 month and I'll be back into like my summer body shape. So I'm keeping it at that point, but yeah, that leaning down part is just the part that really just astounds me more than anything else. But a myth and stereotype that I love to bust on this podcast, and I talked to you about it briefly before we started recording, is it's gotten better the last 5 years due to Instagram, but there's still so many women that if they walk into the gym, they're just scared to death of touching the weights, because they're afraid that if I touch a weight, I'm going to gain 50 pounds of muscle. First of all, I wish I had that type of self-confidence. I would be the CEO of a Fortune 500 company by now. I mean, I would probably rule the world if I had that confidence. And second, it's so not true. I mean, the years upon years of hard work that you're going to need to get to even look, 1% of what you would look like if you thought you touched the weight. It's just insane. But did you ever have that fear when you were getting started? And even if you didn't have that fear, I bet you still hear that all the time. How do you like to respond to that?
I do. I feel like it's less and less. I don't really get the sense of women being like scared to, touch weights and whatnot. But I definitely went through that myself because I started out competing in bikini, and then had too much muscle for bikini, so went to figure. And I definitely had that a brief moment where I was like worried about like looking too manly or getting too much muscle. And then I had this very nice like aha moment of, do you know what? I want to look like how I want to look like, and I don't really care what anyone else thinks. And it was a very freeing moment that, let's pack on the muscle. I don't, I don't care. I like it.
Well,
So
absolutely, and a lot of people, they're just so. I always just tell them, I was like, just try it and see what happens. Because what's the? I mean, it's like you can lose muscle if you want to. If you think it's too much, I mean, you just
exactly.
don't work out as much, and then you do some more. I mean, it's just a lot of people. There's so many misunderstandings, and that's why I like started this podcast, because I think that a lot of people can get a lot of information from it. But one thing that I think impacts women so much more positively than men when it comes to working out, well, it impacts men as well, but not as much. Clearly, is the confidence boost that you get. I mean, we have heard hundreds of stories here from women who've made life-changing decisions. It just helped them better their overall lives, and I always say that's the one thing that you can take from the gym and impact your life. How have you taken that confidence boost and use it to impact your life?
That's been a huge thing for me, to be honest. Like, before I started lifting and heavily and whatnot and getting into it, I was a very shy, timid person, you might say. And so since to now, and I've gotten this comment, from my husband and other people, is like, you're like a completely different person now. And I am, because it gives you, for whatever reason, it gives you that confidence of not really caring what others think and asserting yourself. And so it hasn't like no big life changing decisions have been made or anything, but just the way you carry yourself every day and not being afraid to like go talk to people. As I was like a shy person, it's like completely done a 180 for me.
How surreal is it to look back and just realize that like that shy person is now like going on stage and posing in front of like hundreds of people?
I know.
I mean, how do you, I mean, is that just something where you're just like, I cannot believe that I've been able to have this mindset and been able to mature into this person?
Yeah, it is. It's sometimes, yeah, I'm like, I don't really think about that often, but sometimes, yeah, I'm like, ah, I was so shy and timid, and now I just like am not at all, and it's a wonderful feeling. For women, it's like one of the best things they could do is start lifting and building that confidence, because it's astounding what it does for you.
Now, as you can probably tell, I honestly can't relate to that because I have my own podcast. If that just proves anything in myself, I'm the most talkative person ever. So I've never so I mean, I like that people finally achieve that, because I'm like, oh, I've never experienced that. But I mean, that's just so great, and that's another benefit that we hear. But you started out in bikini. How long into your career before they finally told you, it's like, hey, you have a little bit too much muscle, you should move up to figure?
One show. So my first show I did, I got like sixth or seventh, um, because I had too much muscle, and they don't like that for bikini. And so immediately after that, my coach at the time said, we need to go to figure. Either A, you need to get this muscle off your body, or B, put more muscle on. And so I'm like, my body likes putting on muscle. Why fight that? And so let's go to what's more natural for me. So
Yeah, and one thing that a lot of people don't understand too is the nutritional aspect, where I mean, your nutrition is like 80 to 90% of the results that you get. What were some of the bigger nutritional changes that you made when you really started to take things seriously in the weight room?
yeah, I think one of the biggest things that everyone, you always hear it, but I was always like pretty good during the week before I started competing about my nutrition and whatnot. And on the weekend is like free for all, you know? So the biggest thing with when I started competing and having to be strict like 100% of the time was getting rid of that aspect for me. Basically, it's just like not in the picture anymore, because and that's when I immediately saw the results I wanted to see, was when my nutrition was, like 90 to 100% of the time like on point. And I think the biggest thing that I've changed with that is like I really enjoy what I eat every day. Like I never am like, oh, I have to eat this again. I really enjoy it, and I think once you go through like deprivation, you might say, while you're competing, it like kind of opens up your mind to like what you find enjoyable as food. I know that sounds weird, but it does, and it just, I don't know, stays that way. So
Oh, I always said the only time that you're gonna find me like actually enjoying like for some reason I just don't like apples or I don't like bananas. The only time you're gonna find me enjoying those is if I'm like really deprived and then I'm just so hungry that hey, I'm willing to eat it. But yeah, it's a whole different journey. I mean, I like to compare it sort of to like actual wrestlers, not those like WWE wrestlers, but like real wrestlers where they sort of starve themselves to get to that weight. But I mean, it's very similar. Where I mean, this is a sport where your mind is much more affected than your body because I mean, you can convince your body to work out, but that whole mental aspect, what has that been like for you? Because this is probably one of the biggest mental journeys that a lot of people go through in their entire lives if they compete is getting ready for a show.
for sure. I think the biggest thing that I've learned, like mentally, is hmm, how am I going to word this? Being easy on yourself, I guess. And so, like my first year, like I would year or two, I'm still struggle with this. That if I slip up a little bit, because we're human, every competitor, I guarantee, like slips up. They're not perfect all the time, and just beating myself up about that. And then kind of taking a step back and realizing like the reality of the situation, like, okay, like let's chill out a little bit. It's not that big of a deal. And so it's something I struggle with still, but I'm so much better about now. Just kind of being easy on myself.
Well, speaking about cheat meals, what's your go-to cheat meal?
Oh, I'm a sweets girl. I love my dessert, but meal, I would say I'm a burger and fries as far as the meal goes.
I always said if I ever competed right after the show, I would just rent out a Five Guys for the night and just be like,
Yeah.
"Hey, you're gonna
Oh
feed
yeah.
me until I pass out." Basically,
100%.
that's the goal right down there. But I mean, I always say for a lot of people, they don't realize that for the general public, I mean, 99% of the general public wouldn't be able to get in shape just to be able to go on a prep because people don't realize that you have to be in shape before you go on a prep. You can't just say, "Oh, I couldn't just say right now the way I'm looking, oh, I'm going to go compete, like 8 weeks and then trimming on." I mean, yeah, I'd look slimmer, but I wouldn't look anywhere near as good as anything that would be on that stage. But once you're even in that shape that you can go on a prep for, people don't realize that, I mean, your life is just it becomes sort of like a living hell basically, but it's in a good kind with the results that you get. But I mean, it's like everything is so scientific and so down pat. What was that like the first time that you went on a prep, and has it gotten easier for you as your career has gone on to sort of mentally prepare yourself for because you know what's coming?
100%. So I guess the first like mental battle, as far as that strictness, it was definitely, you might say, hellish for me, and I fought that quite a bit. But and after my first show, I rebounded pretty bad to where like I gained a lot of weight back. And what I have learned that has made it more enjoyable is I'm essentially like I never consider myself out of prep. And so just the goals change. I'm still lifting the same amount and still doing whatever, cardio is prescribed, still sticking to my diet. It's just eating more calories, to build more muscle. And so really like mentally, like not a huge amount changes whether you're in prep or not. And that's the biggest thing I've learned. And when I've started having most success is sticking to that, mental aspect of it all the time instead of just when you're on your 12 weeks.
Yep.
So,
No, I couldn't agree more. But probably the biggest shocking thing that I would have never guessed in a million years when I started this podcast, and that I think the general public wouldn't have guessed as well, is that for so many of these competitors, posing is the hardest thing for them. I mean, it's harder than your nutrition. It's harder than your working out. I mean, I honestly would have never guessed that in a million years. I know a ton of people wouldn't have guessed that either. But after hearing, so many people talk about it, I like to compare it now to being a perfect driver, where you can be a great driver, you can never be a perfect driver. You can be a great poser, you can never be a perfect poser. It's always ever evolving. What has your experience with posing been like?
yeah, it's rough. So starting in bikini definitely helped my posing. I think with that, just be more fluid with my posing, and then going to figure. Um, I had some great posing coaches right away, but it was the hardest part, and people don't realize like, oh, it's taxing on your body and the positions you have to hold for so long. And yeah, it's tough. It's
Well,
not easy.
I mean, people don't realize that the human body is not meant to be in a flex state for that long as it is. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just a lot of people just don't get that. I mean, you're going to be more sore after your opposing session than for a lot of your workouts. I mean, it's I mean, and if you do a posing session after a workout, it's like, heaven help you. I mean, blessings to you, but I honestly just don't know how people get through with that. But out of your figure poses, because I know for anyone out there who's not familiar, I mean, you have your 4 basic poses that you do. What is your favorite pose and what is your least favorite?
My favorite is probably the front pose, and my least would be the side poses. So that would be, yeah, it just contorting how you have to turn yourself all the way around is just the worst.
I already say, don't these people go through enough already as it is? And you already and I mean, you're making them wear high heels too. I mean, that's a whole nother thing where it's like, come on, that's just absolutely ridiculous. And yeah, I mean, it's insane, just the things that go on behind the scene that the general public isn't aware of. But yeah, I would always say the back would be my favorite, only because that's the one time I could put my smile down. Because we've we've heard so many people talk about how like your jaw muscles are the most sore after a show than anything else. A lot of times.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that is nice on the back pose. You can make whatever faces you want to make and it doesn't matter. So
Although some of our guests have said that they've started like putting cameras in the back too that they can look at, and I was like, okay, that's just torture. Then
that's just mean.
I don't know what shows they said were doing that, but that is just absolute pure torture, and I do not I hope that isn't true. But one thing that I love to talk about too is because, as you can tell, I am one of the whitest people you'll ever meet in your entire life. I mean, my skin does not agree with sun. I've never been tan a day in my life. If I go outside, I'm either going to get farmer's tan or burnt to an absolute crisp. And let's be honest, farmer's tan is not a real tan. So I mean, just the whole bodybuilding thing with the tan, it just fascinates me because, it's something that I will never experience unless, I just put all that self tan on myself. And, I do not want to be like, I've seen Jersey Shore, I'm good with that lifestyle. I mean, I'm not into that, but what is that experience like for you? Because we hear so many times on here that it's, a lot of times the people, it's just like, you almost become like a whole different person because you see so many body parts that like really pop out, and you see even more hard work done, and you just sort of become like a new person. What is that feeling like for you when you get that tan on and you see that final finished product before you go on stage?
It's lovely. It's like the finishing touch. You get all that muscle definition and everything. So I love getting my tan. It's my favorite part. I remember my first show I did. I just because you do look like a different person. I walked by my family, and they didn't recognize me at all. They walked right past me. So it's kind of funny.
That was
But
your one chance to get away and you blew it.
I know, right? Just keep walking. Go, go.
Yeah, but I mean, the only downside I've ever heard of that is, I mean, like, yeah, like you got to bring your own, sleeping mattresses, or you got to bring your own sheets and stuff. And I mean, you can't really, you're basically like a human statue. You can't really sit on anything. And, that's a lot of times, that's like the checklist that I say that, just adds up to, what these people have to go through. But a question that I ask everyone, whether they be my bands and musicians or my bodybuilders or health and fitness, is, for my bands, I always ask, what is that experience like when you get to go up on stage and perform live in front of, hundreds to thousands of people? That also applies to the bodybuilders. What is that experience like for you when you get to walk up on that stage and show off all that hard work that you've worked months upon months on?
It's exhilarating, exciting, nerve wracking, kind of all at the same time, and it goes by so damn fast. It's kind of like preparing for Christmas for months, and it's over in like seconds. Um, but it's wonderful. Like it's my happy place for sure.
Well, that's one thing that really intrigued me about the sport too, is because like they train all that time and they're on that stage for that little. I mean, like every other sport, they have so much more time to perform, but that's what just makes it even more fascinating for me, and it just even shows that mental toughness these competitors have, because it's like, yeah, if, normal people, if you say, the ones that you would convince to be able to work out and do the amount of training that it takes for this sport, and then all of a sudden tell them at the last second, oh, by the way, you're only going to be on stage for, maybe a minute max. A lot of them would just be like, I did all this for what? So then I just find it so much more fascinating that way. But what is
And
that?
that's why I think that it's like important for anyone considering competing, that you really need to love prep just as much as you do the show day, because you're spending months and months of prep. So if you hate it, don't do it, for like one day. That's silly. And so I love the prep process, and how every time it's different and the different results you can get by manipulating different things. So yeah.
Well, two of the questions that I love to ask all the competitors that we have on the podcast. I mean, there were so many positive things that happened to me when I started, getting in shape and, getting bigger and stronger. But the one negative thing is that you're going to get asked to move a lot of people's furniture. You're going to get asked to open a lot of pickle jars of balled water. Anything that's sealed on tight, you're the go-to strength person. I mean, I'm at home during the coronavirus helping out my parents, and I go out and get the groceries and basically have to lift the car into the driveway. I mean, I know you have a husband, but still, do you find that, since you've gotten more muscular and gotten in shape, that people might see that you can, or might ask for more favors from you?
Not really so
Oh,
much at work. I work at a veterinary clinic, so when there's heavy dogs, I do get called in to go lift them up. But
she's got the best of both worlds, everyone. That's why I say that's like the one thing that is really beneficial is that you might not get asked as much if you're a woman. But like I said, I'm 6'3", so I mean it's a double-edged sword for me because either way, hey tall guy, I could have zero muscle at all, and hey tall guy, come and help us. So that's been one thing that I've really had to adjust to. But one thing that I really think is fascinating is that when you're a bodybuilder, especially a female bodybuilder, but male bodybuilders get this as well, is that you're sort of like a mini celebrity. Like if you were to walk out in public the way that you're dressed right now, I mean, it's just human nature for people to just be like, oh, that's interesting. Like
yeah.
it's not something that they see out. It's not something that they see every day. What has that adjustment been like for you? Because some people that we talk to, I mean, it's just a gradual change, but has it gotten easier for you to adjust to the fact that you might like draw people's attention if you go out in public?
Yeah, I mean, especially when you're, like, closer in prep. My friends and I went to a concert, and they're like, "Do you realize that everyone's, like, staring at you?" I'm like, "Yeah, I know." It's kind of weird sometimes. You just kinda get used to it. It's the most thing I get all the time is like, "Oh, how do you get your arms like that? What can I do?" And it's like, "Oh, what am I gonna tell you in, like, 2 minutes of time?"
That's when you respond, "Oh, I've never worked out a day in my life."
Right? Yeah. This has just happened. I don't
Just happens.
know.
Just eat your vegetables, you'll be fine.
Yeah, you'll be good. You should be fine.
I know, but I mean, I have met some of those genetic freaks where I mean they could get away with eating 10 Snickers bars a day, and I hate them more than life itself
Yes.
because it's just they don't realize how good they have it. But yeah, it's just fascinating how you draw a lot of people's attention. But clothing, I mean, fit guys have enough problems as it is when it comes to clothing, finding clothing options. But women, I mean, that is just a conundrum where, I
It
mean, so
is.
many people do not understand where it's like the moment that I saw you, and even though you said you had to work on your shoulders, I mean, it's like if you have big, broad shoulders, dresses aren't going to be your best friend. Jeans are another thing that we hear of all the time where it's just not compatible with someone who's living a really healthy and fit lifestyle, and the fact that you basically have to have your prep wardrobe and your off-season wardrobe as well. So I mean, it's a lot of different clothes that you need. But have you found out any like tips or tricks on how to best have a clothing, how to best deal with those clothing options that are can be limited to you?
Um, gosh, a lot of workout. I just wear workout clothes all the time. To be honest, jeans are not your friend. I tell you that right now. And so, and then tank top weather is lovely because it's not, too tight around your shoulders. So,
But we've had people that I mean, like Freddie jeans is one thing that they talk about a lot, which apparently is like the one type of jeans that actually work for like bodybuilders. But still, I mean, it is just such a big
yeah.
struggle, and it shouldn't be. So anyone out there who's thinking about maybe coming up with a clothing line, get on it because I've had hundreds of guests on here that would be willing to buy it. I mean,
Oh
you do
yeah.
pretty well just on this show's guests alone, but I mean, this coronavirus has really changed how we live our lives, at least for the time being. Who knows, how long it's going to keep going on. Some people say it's with us forever, and then other people, I honestly have no idea. But how has this been like for you? I mean, especially being a mom too, and I bet did you have to homeschool the kids then? And then, I mean, it's just been a
Yeah.
conundrum. What is your experience with this quarantine been like?
It's not been horrible, except for the kids out of school part has probably been the worst part. I still continued working the whole time, um, and so navigating schooling them while working, my oldest son really helps the most with that with his younger brother. Um, and then I had a pretty good home gym set up, thankfully, so I didn't miss the beat there at all as far as workouts go.
Yeah, I mean,
So
and that's lucky too, because so many people have struggled to find a place to work out. But at my parents' house too, we have a nice little equipment thing set up where it's just enough to maintain. I mean, I'm not gonna gain anything or really. It's just your basic stuff. But have you dealt with any of the like the? I know there's been some like meat shortages around the country. We had a little bit here in Minnesota. Has there been any struggle with you getting all that nutrition in, or has it been fairly easy? But I mean, like we've had some people where you go to stores now, and I mean they only give you like a couple days worth, so you're just gonna have to keep going back and back to that store multiple times.
yeah, I mean, I only had honestly like 2 weeks where it was a little scarce. You might say, but I just kind of went to different stores and got my stuff and did some big Amazon orders of rice. And so honestly, like, it hasn't been too bad for me. I felt like around here anyway, where I shop, it was only like I said, like 2 weeks where things were a little scarce, and then it seemed to kind of go back to normal ish.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, there was a few times where I was like, "Oh God, this seems like it might get a little bit more serious." But what part of your journey were you at in March? Because some people that I knew that I've had on the show have been, like they were getting ready for a show. Some of them were still in their off season. Where were you at in your year when this started?
It actually, it was is a blessing. It like you find the blessing in it, I guess. But we just finished a show right the weekend before all the shows got canceled, and so it's probably the last show to take place. So I was super thankful for that because that's where I got my overall win. So that was awesome. I did have like two other shows lined up back to back after that show that were canceled. Um, but it honestly, like, it turned out, I'm kind of one just like look for the positive in things, and so it's allowed me more time to build and whatnot. And that show got pushed out to like December, which was supposed to be in July. So I have all this time now, to prepare for it. So that part's awesome, I think.
Do you have any idea when you're going to start your prep then? If you're waiting all the way to December?
Yeah, well, we're gonna do one more show. They have a big, it's called Region Sports Fest coming here to Reno. That's gonna be pretty awesome. We're gonna do that in October, before December, and so I think we're like 16 weeks right now. So in about 4 weeks or so, we'll be back into prep.
I honestly never get the people that do preps during holidays. Like, how do you deal with it? Like for Thanksgiving, like how are you going to deal with that? Because I'm one of those people where it's like I could never show up there with just like my own prepacked meals and stuff like that when everyone else is eating. Is that really try your willpower, especially being a mom too, and just seeing everyone else in the family get to enjoy their Thanksgiving?
I've only had I have I think I've had 2 Thanksgivings where I've, like, stayed on prep during that time, and it honestly wasn't too bad because I was telling my coach, I'm like, "I actually kind of enjoy prep on the holidays because you really don't have to worry about putting on those holiday pounds that everyone else puts on." Not an issue. And so it's not horrible for me, to be honest. I've tried to It's not easy because this girl likes to eat, but um, trying to take the focus away from like just eating and just spending time with family and stuff instead of like being overwhelmed with the food. And if you're allowed a cheat meal, you just make that your cheat meal also. So
Well, and one thing that I find so fascinating about, especially the moms that I have on this podcast, is that I mean, like you have a full time job. You're a mom, that's a full time job in and of itself, and you're a bodybuilder, that's a full time job in and of itself. How are you able to do that? Like my time management, I mean, I lift weights, like 4 or 5 times a week, and then I do this podcast, and then I have another job, and I feel like sometimes like I just want to sit in a corner basically and just like contemplate my life basically. How are you able to do all this stuff?
yeah, it gets a little hairy sometimes. I'll be honest. I start my day at like I get up at 3:30, and then I get home around like 6 or so, and get kid stuff, and I honestly probably don't sit down till about 8 o'clock for about 10-15 minutes before I go to bed. And then you do it all again the next day. But I thrive in that. Like, I'm a busybody. I don't sit down well, and thank God I have like 3 days off every week, and so I have those 3 days to kind of relax or go have fun. So in between the other stuff.
So I used to work nights. So I mean, I was going to bed at like 4 in the morning. So I just always find that fascinating. That some of my guests are getting up by the time I'm going to bed, and if that doesn't tell you anything, I mean, I had a guest 3 nights ago where I stayed up super late to finish editing a podcast, and then they texted me at like 4 a.m. because they just got up, and then they're like, "Hey, I can come on these days. Are you available at that time?" And I was like, "I'm literally just about to go to bed right now." So
What are you doing?
yeah,
Yeah.
I don't. I mean, that drive and that motivation. I mean, well, I guess it's good for Reno because I mean that's probably when it's at its coolest. Is like at 3:30 in the morning if you're gonna go outside and expose yourself in the temperature. But how important is it for you too? Because I mean, like being a mom, there have been so many studies that have shown that especially with this obesity crisis that we have going on, the kids are so much more likely to adapt a healthy and fit lifestyle if they see that from their parents. I mean, they're vastly more likely. How important is that for you too to, I mean, not only just set that as an example, but also, just to show them that, like, hey, you can be fit at any age. Because a lot of people, I mean, I've had guests on here from their 50s and 60s, and it's just a lot of it is just shedding that myth and that image that, like, once you have kids, you're sort of allowed to give up on your body basically, and like you can just say, you know what,
Right.
hey, because I mean, so many people suffer from that. But how important is that for you to teach that to your kids, that, like, hey, you can be healthy at any time?
Oh, 100%. I think, I mean, the fitness aspect of it is definitely huge to pass on to them. My youngest loves it. He has his own little foam weight bench and barbells and stuff that he pretends to lift with me um, from time to time. And so, but I think the biggest thing that I'm proud to like demonstrate for my kids is, working towards a goal and doing whatever it takes to get there and not giving up on it. The fitness part is huge, and staying in shape. They're two boys and they're always running around and they're pretty active.
Are,
So
are they at that wrestling phase where all they do is they just tackle each other basically?
yes,
Yep.
all the time.
I
I
have
just don't
I'm a
look.
middle
I
child. I have
don't
an older
want.
brother and a younger brother, so I can remember those days. Yep.
Yeah, they're always wrestling or football, baseball, something.
I couldn't walk down the hallway without getting tackled in the back or something like that. Anytime, I always had to be on guard all the time.
100%. Yeah.
Does that help that you're in shape to sort of help deal with them? Because I mean, we've had parents that just get exhausted from their kids because, I mean, they're just constantly running around. But knowing that, I mean, you are a lot healthier than the average person, do you think that that's helped you a lot to be able to somewhat keep up with them? Because let's be honest, a kid's energy, I mean, it's basically like if an adult was on cocaine 24/7, basically.
Right. I love that analogy. Yes, it is. I would say definitely, helps keep up with them. I mean, they're luckily at an age where they entertain themselves pretty well. Um, but I remember when I personally was like, I was pretty out of shape before I start getting in shape. I remember like walking up the stairs with my youngest and like being like out of breath and be like, oh goddamn. And it's nice not to have that anymore.
Oh, I mean, like I said, there's so many benefits that just go outside of the weight room in and of itself that really, I mean, a lot of people don't understand. But one thing that I also like to talk about, another myth and stereotype that a lot of people don't understand, is that look that you present on stage, that is not a sustainable look. You're not going to be able to look that way 365 days out of the year. And again, if you do, give me a call because, I'm interested in that. But I mean, and there are people that try to do it. I mean, we've had guests on here that have tried it, and first of all, just the effects that it can have on your body are just, that's enough of a red flag for me where I'm like, I would never even try that. But I can see why people try it because, it's an appealing look. But people don't understand that look, I mean, you have dieted down, you have just done so many things to really make your body look like that when it comes to depleting yourself and just manipulating your carbs or your water. It's just so many things. But what was that like for you when you first realized that, like, hey, this look that I present on stage, it's going to be the best look that I'm going to look for in a while? And has it gotten easier for you to accept that as your career has gone on?
Yeah, it has, and that's, something I think we all struggle with is like, oh yeah, we'd all love to be lean all the time, but no, it's not healthy to be that low body fat, more than like even a week or so at a time. And you're moody as all get out because you don't feel good, and so it's not a sustainable thing at all. And honestly, like it looks good on stage, but like just out and about, it doesn't look great. You know what I mean? It's not health. It doesn't look
I
healthy.
always call it the skeleton look, basically.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, Skeletor. So it's not a sustainable thing, nor would I want it to be. But there's definitely always that struggle with wanting to stay lean, um, and having that picture of yourself of being as lean as you were on stage and reminding yourself that no, this is not all the time. This is just for a short amount of time. So
Well, I always say it's just like starting your own business too, where you got to spend money to make money. You got to put on weight if you want to put on muscle. I mean, those two just go hand in hand, and it's just one of those things that a lot of people have to deal with. But a few questions I like to ask before we get to the end of this year. I mean, everyone, especially in this day and age, I think everyone wants to do something with their body. I mean, whether it comes down to, I mean, losing weight or just toning up. I mean, everyone has goals that they want to achieve, and so many people just, they don't have the knowledge of how to do it. They have the motivation, but it's just, I mean, if you don't know how to do it and you walk into a gym, you're, unless you're like some savant and you're like 1 out of 100, you're not going to really see that many results. But what advice do you have for people? Because I know, like you said, you get asked all the time, like, what can I train for this? But what advice would you have for someone if they just walked up to you and they said, like, hey, I'm really thinking about starting to get in shape, just to be able to get started? Because for so many people, just to take that first step, it
Right.
changes everything, where it's so much easier once you get started to really maintain something.
Yeah, definitely. Um, I mean, as far as like what to get started with, I would always like advise people to lift weights over like doing cardio or anything like that, because that's going to just be amazing for you and give you the most bang for your buck. And I think another huge part of it that I didn't learn at first is to take your time. That it's not going to be, go gangbusters for, a couple weeks and then you're done. It's a lifelong thing. So take your time, don't make it just about getting to A to B, like you're never done in your fitness journey. And so I think if you take it slow, you're more apt to stick with it long term rather than going balls to the walls right away.
Well, I cannot tell you how many times I've heard those stories of, the people that, yeah, I'm going to train for 3 hours a day, every day for like 2 weeks. And the next thing you know, their body's basically broken in half, where then they stop doing it, where it's like, yeah, just simple steps. And I mean, even if it involves just going for walks every once in a while, I mean, that just slow stuff, where I mean, I've heard so many people and so many of my friends are just like, oh, I'm going to start really hardcore. And then I just say, like, there's always that 1%er that can handle it, but so many times I'm just like, no, don't, just go slow. And but I can understand, because especially in this day and age, and especially in my generation, where everyone wants everything now and they want it yesterday, you know, you just think, the more work you put into it, it's gonna. But I mean, it's one of those lifestyles where you have to be constantly, changing and evolving things. But if someone were to walk up to you and say, we made a decision, you can change one thing about the sport of bodybuilding, and everyone would go along with it, what would be one thing that you would like to see changed?
Oh wow. How expensive it is.
Oh, that's honestly one thing
That's
that we hear
not a
of all the
great
time.
answer, but
Yeah.
um, yeah, that's what I would like to see
I mean,
change.
there's always that myth that a lot of people have too, where they think that these bodybuilders like make money. It's like, unless you're like the one of the top 5 on the planet, you're not going to make money. I mean, you lose money. You have to pay for shows and all this other stuff. So it's just, that's one thing too, where it's just like, the first time I heard about, I was like, wait, these people actually pay for that? Like, they don't make money off of it? I was like, what is wrong with these people that they're putting themselves through this and they're paying for it too? It's like, if only I could start a business where I could convince people to do all the work for me, basically, and then have them pay me for it. But yeah, it's so fast. And yeah, there definitely should be, something that really, happens to that. But if we were to talk to you a year from today, where would you like to be at in your bodybuilding career? Where would you like to be at just in your overall life? What are some goals that you would like to have achieved if we were to talk to you a year from today?
A year from today, well, I'm hoping in December I'll have the chance to earn my pro card. So that's a huge goal of mine, and so that's what I'm working on so far. And so that's my biggest goal right now that I'm working towards. So hopefully a year from today,
Yeah,
I have
that would be awesome. And hopefully, we got this pandemic controlled and things are a little bit back to normal. So I honestly hope for that too. But lastly, is there anyone that you'd like to give a shout out to before we wrap things up?
I'd say my coach because she's amazing and honestly is like giving me my passion for the sport. So Shalise.
Oh, Shalais is Schumacher?
Yeah.
Yeah, she's been on the podcast.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Yep.
Yeah,
That's
she's
her.
you want to talk about someone who's big. I mean, her arms basically took up the entire screen, so I'd be like, you got to
Oh
zoom
my
out a little bit there. Yeah, she was super. She's so nice though. I mean, she was a delight to have on. I'm probably actually going to have her on again. It's been close to a year, so actually that's thank you for reminding me that, actually, because then I actually have to message her again. But yeah, that's great. How long have you been working with her?
It's going on a little over a year and a half now. So
That's
yeah.
awesome. Yeah, I've had a few connections like that where I was like, oh wow, I've actually had that person on. So yeah, that's great. And we wish you nothing but the best of luck. But I couldn't think of a better way to end it and to make everyone jealous. Can you give us a front double buy and everyone just she's a mom of 2, basically. Look
There you
look at that.
go.
That's just not even fair. I got to go work out now, basically. I got to, this is I mean, that's my motivation right there for the rest of the day, basically. But again, you guys, we cannot thank you enough for coming on and, sharing your journey. And we wish you nothing but the best. And, it's, honestly, I honestly think you're going to do great. But again, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Well, everyone, go and give her a follow. I'll leave a link to her Instagram page down below. Now, I will warn everyone, it will inspire you to get off the couch and stop eating all those Twinkies. So, but again, you guys, this is Ryan Johnson, DD on the spot, signing out. Have a great day, everyone.